right now on the National Weather. Hey, mic check. Snoqualmie. How do I say that? Snoqualmie? Snoqualmie. Snoqualmie.
Just as it reads.
Right now on the National Weather Desk. Weather whiplash. While a winter storm starts its march across the country,
you can't even see where the lines are on the road.
It's going to deliver a pretty big punch.
Record heat is coming to the south and east.
30+ degrees above the average.
And speaking of heat, there's been too much for some people along the Great Lakes.
I think it's going to lead to many unhappy people because they can't get outside and fish.
Do you know which houseplants are safe to be outside?
They want to be warm and cozy just like we do. We don't want to be out in the freezing cold.
And it's Mardi Gras in New Orleans. We'll see if the weather will cooperate for today's parades and parties.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
And some music to get you in the spirit. Well, good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk on this Mardi Gras. I'm meteorologist Eileen Whalen, and we have a wild week of weather ahead of us. Tens of millions of Americans will be hit with a winter storm and possible blizzard conditions. There's even a risk of severe weather down south. And then in the east, record warmth in just a few days. But let's start with that winter storm. It is going to be a 1, 2, 3 punch. And take a look at all of the winter alerts in our western zones. Blizzard warnings for the upper Midwest and winter storm warnings extending all the way down into Southern California. Also very high winds, and that's going to be what's going to lead to the whiteout conditions and blizzard conditions as well. You can see this area of low pressure. One will move in and then another one right on its heels. So this is going to be potentially one of the snowiest storms that we have seen through the upper Midwest in the Twin Cities. This could go down as one of the top 5 heaviest snowstorms in history, with 15 to 25 inches of snow. And when the National Weather Service says that extreme conditions are expected, that's when you really need to just heed the warnings and stay off the roads. But people in Washington State and Utah are ready for winter weather. We have reporters from both states, starting with Lee Stoll on Squamish Pass outside Seattle.
Yeah, good morning. We actually just made it up to the summit, to the ski area here just a couple of minutes ago. I want to show you the road outside our window right now. This has been heavy snow that we've been seeing all the way basically from exit 47, making our way up here. You can't even see where the lines are on the road. We've got plows going back and forth in the parking lots up here. Avalanche danger is still high where we are and across Stevens Pass too. This is the drive. This is what you're going to see up on Snoqualmie Pass. We only saw a couple of plows out today, but even as we're turning here, we are the first ones making a cut through some of this snow, and it is pretty deep. Great for skiers, but again, you may want to rethink any plans if you're going into the backcountry. The snow falling right now. I took a look at the resort numbers, and it looks like they've gotten anywhere from 2 to 14 inches in just the last 72 hours, depending on the elevation of the mountain. And guys, you can see just how heavy it is still falling up here.
Snowy winter so far. Another big storm will soon march across Utah.
We're talking about a lot of snow, and at times it's going to be very intense. It's going to deliver a pretty big punch.
That's a statewide punch from Logan to St. George and everywhere in between.
That said, we're going to be doing everything that we can to keep the roads safe, but we're asking everybody to make sure that you're ready to travel in these type of conditions.
That's a plea from the Utah Highway Patrol, too. Despite warning after warning, storm after storm, they run into careless drivers.
It's frustrating because you try time and time again. We try to tell people to increase their following distance and reduce their speed and pay attention.
Well, while those regions are going to look and feel like winter, a large portion of the east is going to feel like summer, at least for one day. Meteorologist Ryan Mirando has the details.
Well, we're still on par to have an extremely record-breaking week. These were the afternoon highs on Monday. Really just no sign of winter here on the East Coast, and that's to really do with our jet stream pattern. It's taking a huge turn to the north, and that's surging temperatures potentially 30-plus degrees above the average, especially for the areas in that dark red. And we could break several records on Thursday. Each dot here shows the potential of breaking an afternoon high record stretching from Delaware to our nation's capital all the way down into Florida. In the Washington, D.C. area, they could get up to 80 degrees. That would shatter the record of 78 set back in 1874. Here in Macon, we're forecasting a high of 83 degrees, which will break the record of 82 set back last year. And even in Orlando, Florida, they could potentially get up to 90 degrees. The last time Orlando had a 90-degree day in February was in the 1960s, 6 decades ago.
Wow. Well, in West Virginia, people are still cleaning up following devastating floods last Friday. One of the largest floods was in Milton, a town still recovering from a 2021 flood. Water surrounded several neighborhoods as well as an elementary school, but it receded in time for school to open this week. The Army Corps of Engineers has been planning to build a flood wall in Milton for some time. Now, construction has yet to begin, although their website says construction is expected to begin this year.
We're ready for it. We've been ready for several years, but we sure are anxious to get the flood levee.
Well, firefighters spent the weekend handing out cleaning supplies to residents. The Great Lakes region has seen an unusually warm winter, leaving the ice coverage on the lakes at record lows for mid-February. And overall, lake temperatures are up by 5 degrees over the last 50 years. Meteorologist Heather Bricka has more from Traverse City, Michigan.
This is a time-lapse looking across the Straits of Mackinac Wednesday, where the ice is flowing under the bridge, but typically that area is 90% covered in ice this time of year. Currently, the Great Lakes total ice cover is at 6%, while last week the ice cover was at 10.5%. The overall average ice cover for the Great Lakes basically averages around 39.5%. If we break it down by each lake, Lake Superior is at 4.68%, Lake Michigan's at 7.26%, Lake Huron is at 10.58%, Lake Erie at 0.9%, and Lake Ontario is at 1.62%. In addition to less ice, the overall lake temperatures are up by 5 degrees over the last 50 years. The overall maximum ice cover has decreased slightly to about 22% decline for all lakes combined from 1970 to 2020. Open water on the lake means that there's more moisture in the air, which amounts to more lake effect snowfall or rain.
There's a lot of urgency by a number of Great Lakes scientists to collaborate and start looking at wintertime. It used to be in many places, the 6 months of the year was winter, and much of that was ice cover. We really don't know, what we're losing.
And there was unusually warm weather for the Austin Marathon this weekend. 18,000 runners took to the streets of Austin. And while things started out relatively mild, by the afternoon, runners were dealing with 77-degree temperatures. Meteorologist Chicago Windler has more.
Running 26.2 miles is a daunting task. Marathoners can control some things like training, hydration, nutrition, sleep, and even gear. But there's one thing they can't control: the weather.
The road to the finish line can sometimes be smooth sailing.
Oh, if you could dream it up, 45 degrees, no wind, and nice and sunny.
But lifelong runner Paris Shaw knows Mother Nature usually throws in a curveball or two.
Really good runner advice here is you should be a lot more conservative early on in the race. So don't throw out your goals because of any weather condition. You can run a PR in 80 degrees, you can run a PR in 32 degrees.
As runners brave the elements, race officials plan for every contingency.
The things that make us nervous when it comes to weather, make us lose sleep at night, are really dangerous weather conditions.
2006, an ice storm delayed the 28-degree start. And in 1993, it hit 82 midway through the race. This year started cool and dry in the 40s, but warmed up fast.
You gotta be well hydrated. You gotta make sure you're drinking water 48 hours in advance, really putting it down.
When you start to push 70+ degrees for the marathoners and humid conditions is when we start to see people's perspiration just really going up, and they're not realizing how much they're actually sweating and how much water they're losing. And so our medical teams are prepared for that.
And the weather may have been a little too warm this year for some runners, myself included. But there's always next year. At the Austin Marathon, I'm Chicago Windler for the National Weather Desk.
Well, now to the Bahamas, where a daring dog took on a 12-foot hammerhead shark. It happened off the coast of EXUMA, where passengers on a boat tour caught the whole thing on camera. Now, it's unclear if the dog was defending his home or just looking to play with the shark. Regardless, he escaped the incident unharmed. Well, coming up on the National Weather Desk, we're going to talk with an expert about what the weather is like on Mars. And surprisingly, it's not that different than Earth. Plus, tips on how you can prevent spring allergies. We're back after this.
Meteorologist Charlie Lopresti would look at the northeast. It's a pretty active looking pattern this week. A little bit of snow and rain here in southern New England. That's moving out this morning. Most of today is fine. Most of Wednesday will be fine. Notice another pencil thin line of snow and rain later on tonight. That's about 8 p.m. Now, the most significant storm system this week in the series, or the parade of storms, is going to be Wednesday through Friday morning. That's 8 p.m. Wednesday. I think we're going to see some snow, mix, and rain. That should be coming to an end Friday morning.
I'm meteorologist Jonathan Myers, and here's a look at the mid-Atlantic region. Up and down the 95 corridor looks pretty good as we start the day, although there could be a sprinkle here or there and maybe a couple of showers into the afternoon, especially north. Temperature's still going to be nice and mild, even as this latest weather maker moves on through. There's going to be a little cold front. Will eventually turn colder into the middle of the week, but for now, temperatures in the 60s to near 70. That's the scene here.
I'm meteorologist Vetus Reed. Here's a look at your southeast forecast highs for the day. Birmingham 71, 71 Atlanta, Tupelo about 74 degrees, Mobile 73, Jacksonville 83, West Palm sunny with 85 degrees. We're looking at sun and clouds down in the parts of Florida, but we do have a chance for a few spotty showers south of Atlanta as we see a little bit of a cloud cover scattered here, but then a little bit of sun could be breaking out as we get into the later portion of the day, but definitely a little bit of partly cloudy conditions over parts of the southeast.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
A great way to start the day with a display of crepuscular rays from South Carolina. These beams are most visible at sunrise and sunset when the sun shines between gaps in clouds or other things. Particles of dust, moisture, and pollutants also scatter the light into beams. And now a Pacific Northwest sunset on a recent sunny, cold, and windy evening on Oregon's Cannon Beach.
For more content like this, like the National Weather Desk on Facebook.
Well, as NASA starts to work toward the goal of putting humans on Mars, a group of atmospheric scientists are studying its weather. And you might be surprised to find out that Mars experiences a lot of the same types of weather that we do here on Earth. But there are some major differences as well. Emily Gracie spoke to one of these scientists to find out if you'll need an umbrella on the red planet.
Mars does have an atmosphere and it does have weather. It has lots of things that would look familiar to us on Earth. One of the big differences or key differences between Earth and Mars is that Mars's atmosphere is very, very tenuous. It's very thin. It's just got very, very low atmospheric pressure. So just to give you an idea, on Earth, we sometimes use the units of millibars, and the surface pressure on Earth is 1,000 millibars, give or take. On Mars, the surface pressure is about 7.
So how far up in our atmosphere would we have to go to get to that point?
Yeah, if you go up in our atmosphere to about 100,000 feet, that would be the equivalent of the surface pressure at Mars. And so 100,000 feet, that's 3 times higher than commercial aircraft fly. And that's just to get to the surface pressure of Mars.
Well, let's talk about weather on Mars. What do they experience?
Temperature on Mars is far, far too cold for any liquid precipitation, but they do have snow, and they do have storm systems, kind of like we have on Earth, particularly in our middle latitudes, like we experience in the United States and Europe. These are storm systems that have low pressure centers and high pressure centers and cold fronts and warm fronts. Mars has lots of dust storms in various sizes, from small scale ones and even dust devils, all the way up to these storms that cause global impact.
I'm curious how you're monitoring the weather on Mars.
Yeah, there are orbiters. These have cameras that operate in the infrared wavelength and the ultraviolet wavelength. This allows us to see different features of Mars's atmosphere. And then we have weather stations that are on the ground. These are primarily on rovers, and they are just very similar to weather stations on Earth, and they tell us what's going on right at the location of the rover.
How neat. Well, if you want to check out some of the latest weather observations from Mars, all you have to do is head over to YouTube. We've posted a longer version of this interview with links to those weather reports. Just search the National Weather Desk and be sure to subscribe while you're there. And back here on Earth, there's still a lot to learn about weather, like how much wind it takes to move an object. Syracuse meteorologist Violet Skibber says there's a formula to figure that out, as long as you know the weight and the area of the object.
So the formula is the square root of 195 times the weight divided by the area. So let's go over a few examples, starting with your common maple leaf. Let's say it has a weight of 0.002 pounds and an area of 0.04 square feet. Putting that into the formula, it takes a wind of about 3 miles per hour to blow that leaf around. Now looking at, let's say, your average trash can. It weighs about 37 pounds with an area of about 9 square feet. That takes about 28 miles per hour to push that laterally. Looking at a common average person, let's say they weigh about 175 pounds with 7.7 square feet of area. That takes about 67 miles per hour to move a person, which is the same level as, let's say, severe wind gusts from a damaging thunderstorm. That can not only move a person, but can also cause damage to housing and even some trees down as well. Now let's look at a car that's parked, not driving. Let's say it has a weight of 2,800 pounds with an area of 69 square feet. Putting that into the formula, it takes about 90 miles per hour to move a car, which is usually with straight-line wind gusts from a line of thunderstorms, maybe a hurricane, even a tornado, some very potent weather systems you would need to be able to move a car like that with 90 miles per hour.
Well, there are so many places enjoying a warmer than usual winter. So the question comes up, since the weather is warmer, which plants are safe to be outside and which ones aren't? Meteorologist Amy Aronson finds out from a plant expert.
If you go back and look at the trees like you have in your yard, like the blueberries, the figs, they've all lost their leaves. So without their leaves, they cannot photosynthesize. So they're not using any energy. So they're in a deep, deep sleep. That's what we call a dormancy. So they're resting. While they're in this state, really the cold weather is not going to bother them. Same thing with these evergreens on the other side. They have leafy, their leaves have a waxy coating. It protects them. It keeps them from losing any moisture. So they're also going to be fine.
Now, there are things that aren't safe, and you want to make sure you keep inside during this time of year, especially if there's a frost or a freeze.
Right, because we're all excited with these warmer temperatures. We think this is spring. This is not spring.
Not yet.
So, and I know I have friends that are calling me saying, can I take my houseplants outside? No, I think, you know, if you want to put them out for a couple hours on those really warm days, that's fine. But let's keep these inside and keep them nice and warm. Most of these are tropical plants, so they want to be warm and cozy, just like we do. We don't want to be out in the freezing cold.
That makes sense.
And if you've got any of these beautiful floral gifts over Valentine's Day or just purchase them yourself, keep these inside. This can come out later, and you can plant them. This is a regular mop head hydrangea. But when it's all bloomed out and leafed out, that's when you're going to have the damage.
And what about the tulips that are already popping up in our yards?
Tulips are fine. They actually, tulips, daffodils, any of your bulbs that are coming up, they love the cold weather. They want it cold, and if we get a little bit of snow, that's just an extra layer of protection.
Learning something new every day here. And the warm weather and plants means it's that time of year where we start thinking about our spring allergies. And as Lee Stoll explains from Seattle, Washington, there are steps that you can take now to avoid a difficult allergy season later.
As many as 60 million people suffer from seasonal allergies in the U.S. Health experts say you can limit symptoms before they even start.
Really starting to block inflammation now can help not only at the start of symptoms, but also kind of make it a better season overall.
There are many over-the-counter therapies to talk to your doctor about, like a nasal spray. You can also try nasal irrigation devices to flush out irritants, like a neti pot.
Those can be started closer to the allergy season, but the nasal steroids we really say to start around this time of year.
With gardens turning greener, now is also the time to think about keeping the outside environment from getting inside your home. When it starts warming up, keep the windows closed in both your car and your house. Make sure pets don't bring pollen into your bed.
You know, the pollen starts floating around before you see the leaves on the trees, and so it can catch people off guard.
The CDC says climate change could add to allergy woes, potentially leading to higher pollen concentrations and longer pollen seasons.
Well, as we head into the break, we'll take you to the skies over Shaver Lake in California. What a beautiful view.
Well, a very good Tuesday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael. We've got some snow across the northern plains for the day today. Across the southern plains, pretty quiet. Not for tomorrow, though. We've got rain moving in and some significant snow across the northern plains there again for tomorrow into the Great Lakes. And that still continues across the north while we're getting into the 70s in portions of the Ohio Valley. Much colder in Bismarck, a high of 3 below zero.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. We're starting off cloudy, and there's plenty of warmth all across the region, 60s all the way up into the Dallas area. It doesn't get cool until you're in Oklahoma. We're keeping our eyes on the next weak Pacific front coming in. There's rain behind it, but there's very warm, humid air out ahead of it. So that means that temperatures are going to be warming into the 80s all the way back up pretty close into Dallas-Fort Worth. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia, and that's a look at your regional weather.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Rebecca Stevenson. Here's what's happening across the West. Temperatures right around normal today are going to be falling across the Pacific Northwest. As a cold trough of low pressure moves in, it's going to bring in very heavy mountain snow, powerful wind gusts developing, and blizzard conditions, too, as we get the snow working its way even down into the southwest. And that is the scene from here.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
It's Fat Tuesday, which means the Mardi Gras celebrations come to a peak today. And there are parades and celebrations throughout the day in New Orleans. So will the weather cooperate? Here's the forecast.
Happy Mardi Gras, everybody, or as we like to say, laissez-les bon temps rouler, which means let the good times roll. No rain on your parade today. We're going to have magnificent Mardi Gras weather, a significant temperature surge as we're going to see highs today near 80 degrees. So mid-morning, 70 degrees. At noon, we go to 76. And by 3 o'clock, we're going to be at 80 degrees. And then for tonight's parades, we're going to have temperatures in the 70s. So all in all, today's Mardi Gras forecast could not be any better. Of course, we hope to catch a ton of beads and moon pies. It will be a warm end to the carnival season. I'm meteorologist Kelly Costa.
And we would love to connect with you. You can find us on all your favorite social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Just search the National Weather Desk or scan the QR code on the bottom left corner of your screen. We'll be right back. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Tomorrow on the National Weather Desk, we will take a deep dive into why parts of the South are experiencing such high temperatures this week. I'm meteorologist Eileen Whalen. Make it a great Tuesday in Mardi Gras, and we'll see you back here on the National Weather Desk tomorrow.